Hello, my ninjas. Today's video, we are actually going to be talking about a tier listing for the Ninjutsu, and the Nioh 2 video game. Now, I'm going to be doing this a little bit ad lib, which is more preferable to me. I apologize for all the videos in which I was like trying to talk. I was reading off a script just to make sure that I wouldn't forget all of the details that I wanted to remember because a lot of the first videos, the first couple times I tried to take, I would forget something and then I'd be like, crap, then I'd have to re record. And I like the first couple videos probably took me like 20 tries just to get out. And I was like, you know what? I'm not doing this. I'm just going to have to type all this stuff out and then read it out. But I'm a very low effort content creator and I don't care to like try and record a video, then record audio, then try and match it all up and do all that stuff. So I was just like, it's gonna come out a little bit janky, a little less professional than I would want, but I would rather just get it out because Neo 2's been out for a very long time, and despite a game that has been created by Team Ninja, for some reason ninjutsu and ninja techniques are things that I haven't really seen anyone really go into a deep dive about, which is wild to me. It seems almost, honestly, in my experience, that ninjutsu in Neo is kind of frowned upon and people don't really like to engage with it for some reason outside of the substitution jutsu, but that's neither here nor there. That's a whole separate topic. We can get into that another time. I'm going to be just going through this tier list, and instead of um, going through each jutsu in order and telling you how I would rank them, it's actually going to be easier for me for editing purposes later if I just go through all of the jutsu per tier that I feel that they're in. So first is going to be the way that I'm going to do these tiers would be S is going to be your absolutely must haves. A is going to be your very good. Like I most likely always run these in some capacity. B's are going to be your decent. C tier are going to be this typically is needing something to go along with it or some kind of condition or scenario for it to be good rather than it just being able to be useful in general all scenarios. D tier is something better than this exists. E tier is going to be I would actively avoid these. I mean, if the game didn't have a capacity for the amount one could prepare, I wouldn't say no, I'm not going to load these, but uh, in the sake of conserving jutsu capacity, I'm not loading these. And then F tier are your downright bads, just like this is I don't have anything really redeeming to say about it, despite everything that I've said in my videos. All of those videos are really like of course you can play the game however you want. However, I wanted to talk about the jutsu in a way that was more in depth than just what the description of each jutsu will say. So I really took the time and really sat down and tried to find and pull out as many ways that I could make practical use out of each jutsu, maybe in ways that most people didn't think. Honestly, out of doing this activity, I actually learned a few more things myself about jutsu that I would use, just not in those specific ways. So let's just get into it. Your absolute F tier dog crap jutsu is going to be your Kodama transformation. I mean, like I said, it wasn't until recently, I've been playing this game for years, it wasn't until recently where I finally kind of came to the understanding of like, hey, this is for like team battles, but like there's just so many problems with this. The simple fact that, one, you can't use this again effectively if the players already or an enemy's already detected you, so it can't function like a smoke ball. You can't move like the sneak thief. Um, there's just practically no actual utility to this. Like, if I were to throw a smoke ball down and then turn into a Kodama transformation, that only works against regular mobs, not even like I said, named characters. I just There's no reason why, like, even in the case of, like, hey, let's say I don't have enough capacity for sneak thief, and I'm just gonna, what's it called, like, if your goal is to be sneaking through a map and avoiding danger or whatever, then I don't know why you can't make room for something else and just get, the sneak thief and catwalking scrolls. It just doesn't make sense to me to be like, oh, well, I can ready catwalking, but I can't ready sneak thief. And so therefore I need the Kodama to run up behind enemies that are on patrol, which most of them don't do, and wait for them to turn around, turn into the Kodama, and then wait for them to pass, and then try and continue on. Just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So really bad jutsu. Like, stay away from this unless you're just really trying to do a gimmicky thing, like I said, and play multiplayer and really trying to have like your friend or whoever fight on your behalf. Like, even when I had a Mujina companion, it was really hard to actually get them to be in a place where they would engage with enemies. So it's just not worth it. And then moving on, that was our only F tier. Moving on to our E tier is going to be the Storm Kunai. Now, the Storm Kunai, here's a big thing that I've been wanting to discuss for so long. So I remember when I was new in this game and I would first start playing this game, and I'm pretty sure we've all seen at this point a ninjutsu builds where people would be doing massive damage with kunai and so on and so forth. And one thing that players like to do that they don't like to tell you that they're doing is they'll get to like Underworld Depths, Dream of the Neo, whatever, and have all this massively overpowered gear, and then go back to Dream of the Samurai or the base game with all that super powered gear way leveled outside of the new game version that they're playing on, and then pretend like it's their build that's allowing them to do that damage and that capability, and not simply just the fact that those enemies scale so much lower than what the player is currently at. And I find a lot of the times players do that and they give a false perception on what these jutsu can specifically do. Like, for instance, in my Rakusen coin, I had, you know, shot a few at a Tengu and ended up killing it in midair. After, but I did say in the video that the damage it does is completely negligible. So when I'm doing my like videos of me actually using the jutsu so you can get an idea, I typically go on the lower new game or new game versions as much as reasonable, because I'm trying to convey a point, not to give a false perception on the power of these things. And I explicitly say that in the case of Rock Sin Coin about its actual damage being completely negligible. I only do it because if I'm trying to explain something, and a lot of the times I might have to do multiple takes because the enemy AI is just not cooperating with what I'm trying to accomplish, I don't want to have the added stress of them just beating the crap out of me, especially because I try and use Ren Hayabusa as many times as possible because he's like the pinnacle difficult enemy. I just don't want all the extra stress of that enemy just beating the hell out of me while I'm looking down at my screen, reading off this script and trying to not get killed while another screen, the game is going on and I can't really see both at the same time because my audio has been kind of weird and I'm having to like hunch over my laptop and speak into the camera while reading off of a script off of this laptop while also then looking up at another TV screen to see what's actually going on. So I do that just to be able to actually get through the video and explain what I'm trying to explain, not because I'm trying to give a false perception on what these jutsu are capable of. And the Storm Kunai is one such of these jutsu where players will use them and make them seem like they're so much more powerful than they actually are, or so much more useful. These are not, um, and they only do more damage than the regular kunai if and only when all three hit, which like enemy are able to sidestep stuff that honestly it feels like they shouldn't be able to. So more often than not, they can probably just sidestep out of at least two of these, or one of them, sorry. And you're you basically wasted a lot more jutsu costs, but you can only prepare six of these as opposed to 10 kunai. These cost so much more jutsu than the regular kunai. It's just not worth it altogether. Next is going to be the pinwheel shuriken. These are just too slow. They only hit twice. I heard someone told me that against the Yuki they hit multiple times. But that's literally only one enemy. Um, and again, I'm not saying these are like absolutely useless. My point is like I'm not wasting a jutsu slot on these. These have a high jutsu cost. Sure, you can ready 10, but it's just I can never really see myself trying to deal because the point of these are to deal damage, right? And in terms of the damage compartment, it's not worth it. The only other use is to stagger enemies. There's plenty of other ways to stagger enemies in close distance, in better ways, in my opinion. Um, Next is going to be the where are they? I feel like best there. The antitoxin pills. Um, there's plenty of other there's items that they give you in the game to nullify poison. Same thing with the seven herb pills. They give you items to nullify paralysis, if that's even what's happening. Typically, I try and use the sake to prevent these kinds of what's it called, status ailments, or I'm pretty sure there's like an Anyo jutsu that helps prevent these statuses of paralysis and poison that you can take preemptively. And yeah, the resistance. So when it comes to these, these are secondary, and if you're paralyzed, typically the enemies that paralyze you are too fast to capitalize on it unless you already have that as a yeah, it seems like just a waste of a slot to be using either of these instead of just honestly being better. Next is going to be the gunpowder bomb. Again, these are literally the only purpose these are for is to help level your ninjutsu. There's not really anything special about them. I would not ready these because the game already gives you them. They drop like fucking candy in the game. There's no point to readying these when the game gives you them all the time. Um, Next is going to be where is it? The thunderous hell. The biggest issue with this is just how it comes out in the space that it affects. Just usually does not hit enemies. It's not very reliable, and it's obviously it costs more jutsu than the regular Raijin. You can prepare less of it. it's not particularly good. I would never go out of my way to get these. Rock and Sin coin. Um, again, like it really doesn't sound like it's that big of a deal, but the lack of accuracy, the lack that these don't fly in a straightforward line, they cost key to use. There's too many downsides just to inflict a status ailment on an enemy with ninjutsu hit when you can do that with literally any other ninjutsu that actually has benefits to using this. Next, we're going to go into the D tier. That we're gonna hit kunai. Kunai again. D tier is something better than this exists. So kunai better. Something better than this exists, and kind of the same thing with the storm kunai, where people over exaggerate how useful these are. Next would be the paralysis shuriken. The main reason why I feel this way is because if you're going to be paralyzing, the I mean, I've created a whole video about how to paralyze both yokai, humans, and shiflings, all the like, and paralysis just isn't really necessary, honestly. I mean, it's not. Again, these aren't saying that these are bad, but it's just not necessary. Something better than this exists. Blinding shell, very good effect. Like I said, one of my all-time favorite effects. It can really trivialize enemies. However, you can get this effect from the Imago clan on any ninjutsu hit. So there's no reason to ready these when I can use any other jutsu and still get the binding effect. Um, Next would be Galnut Broth. Um, I'm not too much of a fan of the imbuement with Sakota effects in the first place because typically, again, if you're poisoning enemies, the main goal then is to keep the poison going, and you're most likely not going to inflict a status ailment if you're just doing regular hits. You're most likely going to have to be doing active skills. And if you're using active skills, then you might as well use the Arcana that can grant that instead of wasting a Jutsu slot. Um, Next is going to be poison arrows. So poison arrows, like like same kind of issue with the um, paralysis shuriken. It's like okay, I mean you can use these, but there's something better that you probably should be using than trying to poison enemies. Like you really want to poison enemies. There's just better ways to go about it than wasting an arrow shot on that. Um, Next is power pills. So I've always been a huge proponent of like try not to focus on raw damage. This is all this is gives you raw damage, and sure it scales with your ninjutsu power. However, superior gameplay and the more and strategic use of other ninjutsu is going to be much more powerful than using these. Like I can get much more mileage out of stronger jutsu than using these, uh, and this just becomes a wasted jutsu slot. Next is going to be the enhanced shrapnel bomb. These are just too clunky, too slow. You would need the Ega set to make these just speed up a little bit faster. The pathing for how they explode is just too high. It's just not great if you're trying to, like the point of the bombs are to hit multiple enemies, but this really doesn't do this unless the enemies are like really tall, but it's just not effective in that regard. So I can't really place it any higher. Next is going to be tiger running. As I said in that video, if your goal is to just traverse through the area and get to the boss or wherever you're trying to go, just move around, then I would just use the hatchets skill. I can't remember what it's called. You could just go watch that video. It's in there. There's a hatchet skill, a sheath skill that increases your running speed. So this just becomes a wasted jutsu slot. There's something better. Moving on to the C tier, so we have your shuriken. C tier is your it needs something extra to be good. So shuriken really relies on that empowered ninjutsu effect and or the unlimited shuriken from the Hayabusa uh, Dragon Ninja set. So shuriken better than the Rakensen coin because they fly straight, they stagger opponents. Um, they can obviously inflict whatever status ailment on ninjutsu hit, and it's super cheap. That an empowered ninjutsu effect would allow you to recover these very easily. But like I said, you either need the empowered ninjutsu or you would need unlimited ninjutsu, unlimited shuriken effect for this to be particularly good. Poison shuriken. Um, this would be my more or less preferred method of inflicting poison, but only when wearing the Tsuchigumo set because unlike or the reason why I didn't have the paralysis shuriken in here is that the Tsuchigumo is a set that actually gives you poison accumulation. It's inherent to all those sets, whereas there is no paralysis accumulation inherent set. So with all the Tsuchigumo armor sets, these actually can become viable for inflicting poison, especially when adding the Shirohame Guardian Spirit to that. Actually makes you not needing to use a bunch of these just to inflict poison, and then obviously you want to maintain it. So as long as you throw these every now and then, the enemy will stay poisoned. Considering that they're low on jutsu costs, it's relatively not that difficult to recover these with the empowered ninjutsu effect. Um, Next is going to be your caltrops. I mean, these are fine. It's just like you would need to set something up. You'd have to have like a whole strategy and a plan to really take advantage of these. You'd like more often than not, you're just throwing these on the ground and just luring your opponent into them rather than it being more like a proactive kind of thing. I guess you could throw it straight down on your enemies, but it's just not that great. Um, and those only really shine if you also have the sloth on ninjutsu effect. Otherwise, it's just pointless. Um, what's next? Blister Beetle Power Powder. Kind of same thing with the Poison Shuriken. These become viable once you have the Tsuchigumo set. Next is going to be the Last Gambit Pill. So I made a whole video about these where you would need either the uh, replacement jutsu. I can't remember what it's called. Substitution jutsu. Uh, that why don't I just look at it here? It's literally in here. The quick change scroll, the sneak thief scroll, the power pill, uh, using weapon skills to increase your attack damage, and possibly armors with the critical, uh, with bonuses on critical health to really make effective use out of these. Um, and that is kind of the whole point of this specific tier. Is that it requires something else to be good. I would not just be using these just willy nilly. Uh, what's next? Ground fire. Ground fire. Really, like the point of all of these is that you can layer them all up with all the other ground fires. So it's really contingent on you also having the rest of these to really be good. In which case, I can't really particularly give it higher. Same thing with the toxic and paralytic ground fire. They all kind of need you to layer them on top of each other instead of trying to cast them individually one by one. Next is going to be the Flame Dragon. Um, these are particularly only really good against human enemies, which is kind of the situation that, you know, really allows this thing to shine. But against yokai, there's something better. Um, I would only specifically use this against a human, and there's no reason why you couldn't also use other jutsu for the same purpose. It's just it's very very strong and it is very very good. However, it just takes so much jutsu cost, and you can only prepare so little of it that it's just not worth it over other things. Then you would need other things to like really make it shine. Like you could have a health bonus on fire damage, or life siphon recovery on fire damage, and that could give you a good chunk. But it's really at the end of the day, what I tried to make a whole build out of it, and I couldn't like to effectively have it so using this one time would refill your entire health bar. That just was not working. Levitation scroll, a very recent video that I made, effectively showing how this could be very very effective, but it was relying on so many other things. It was relying on possibly burst countering, excuse me, possibly burst countering humans, inflicting corruption, inflicting confusion, using a fire bottle or fire pot, using a yokai water pot, like so many different things to get maximum effort out of these. Don't get me wrong, when you did, it was great, but it just required a whole bunch of other stuff other than it just itself being good. Now, moving on, we are at B tier, which is they're decent. Like there's not really too much to say other than they're pretty straightforward how you can use these. They're good, not really anything bad. So we'll probably fly through these. Fire Shuriken, decent at staggering, staggers twice, deals fire damage, inflicts scorched, can deal a lot of damage over time. Great. Smoke ball, one of a kind. Jutsu is one of the only ones that can actually instantly de-aggro enemies from you. If you use mid combat. Uh, Next is, let's see. Oh, there it is. My eyes keep missing it. Hemlock broth. I mean, again, goes back to that whole paralysis video that I showed. If you doing the paralysis combo, especially against human, having your enemy also dealing paralysis, when you things like your final blow can engender another paralysis where you're paralyzing them again and can get a whole nother, especially with the Izuna drop, can get a whole nother grapple and finishing blow back to back, just off of the accumulation that happens when having your weapon. And of course, you could have it naturally imbued via the effect, but these also, scale with your ninjutsu. So if your ninjutsu's high enough, it'll scale over a passive effect on your weapon, uh, making it so that weapon's effect could be used for something else more useful. Let's see. That's it. Shrapnel bomb. I mean, these are just great. Like they deal a decent amount of damage, have a decent amount of range, very reliable. Doesn't take too long on hands. And a thing that I've been wanting to say for a while is like, so I had replayed this game a while back. I just kind of wanted to see what it was like going through the entire base game with my knowledge and that. And I found when I got done, because I keep preaching people to use items in this game, people refuse to use items like it's gonna kill them or something like that. But I noticed that once I got done effectively lobbing all of my items at a boss, it would be dead. Like, and I'm talking about my fire, my gunpowder bombs, my shrapnel bombs, my the ones that the game drops for you rather than the ones that are ready to shrine, your Tengu fans, like everything. By the time I got done throwing all that stuff, even sometimes before I could finish throwing all the stuff, the boss enemy would be dead. So these are always like welcome to have. They deal a decent amount of damage, and I've already said about them. Very decent. Obviously not the best on damage, but it's decent. You know. Going next, explosive arrow. One of my favorite things to do is especially when I see those slug enemies, like because there's usually multiple around. Is I'll pop one of these bad boys and just clear them out. It's one of my favorite things to do. Other than that, can be very generally useful. But that against the slugs, one shot in the slugs is probably my favorite way to use these. But it's not exclusive to those, of course. Um, what is next? Noxious ground fire. So these, oh my god, for a long time I just did not know how to use these, what I would use them for. They just like the stench thing just seemed like a pointless effect to have because most other enemies don't heal themselves with elixirs, if at all. The only ones that might would be the what are they called? The Sohoya, or if you summon a Revenant, they might heal themselves. It just didn't seem like something worth doing, but after finding out how much key damage these things can just do, especially against bosses that are large and aren't particularly quick to get out of the blast range, it is ridiculous. These are very, very good. I'm just not too much of a ground fire kind of guy. That is not to say that these are not good. Next is going to be Hellfire. So these can have, like I said, very similar use to bombs. I typically do this when I approach an area where I see, like, let's say, like a mist or something I can't get past without triggering. And if I trigger that, then I'll trigger maybe these other few Gaki that are over here chowing down on a corpse. And I just don't want to have to fight all of them all at the same time. Maybe the area is weird where I can't exactly lob a bomb to them or something like that, where I just really want to make sure that they die. This can be useful because it effectively just teleports the fire explosion under the locked on enemy's feet. So that's a great way to use these. Otherwise, it's just for the simple fact that for some reason the flaming heron does more damage, costs less, and can be readied more. That I just can't place this any higher. Same thing with Eight Cold Hells, and then Exorcist Blade and Umbral Bullet. I just made videos about those not too long ago. Honestly, for the longest time, I I saw League of Milk's video and I just ignored it because I was like, oh, that only works on that yokai. But then I was like, you know what? Let me stop being lazy and let me actually test this thing out. And I found out that it does work on, you know, multiple yokai, not all of them, of course, but the fact that I was able to effectively stun lock Yatsu no Kami without paralysis, like I've shown before, and kill him showed me that obviously these are way better than I originally gave them credit for. Obviously, they're very great to be used in scroll missions as well. That's their intended point, in my opinion. So, very great for those scenarios. And next is going to be the A tier. A tier, meaning these are very, very good. I usually try and bring these with me, if at all. Um, the first one's going to be our Caltrop balls. Very, very obviously widespread, so enemies don't get around them. Much easier to hit multiple enemies. Inflicts the reduced movement effect, just like the Caltrops, but they also deal a lot of key damage, especially if you guide them enemies through it the long way. And then obviously coupled with the Sloth and Ninjutsu hit can really slow down enemies. Very, very good. The only downside is the fact that it's kind of on the higher side of jutsu cost, but you know it's very easy to recover these with Empower Ninjutsu when your enemy is just surrounded by these, where they can't really even take a step without hitting one of these. It really makes it easy to just abuse enemies while they're in a minefield of Caltrops and getting staggered by all of them. Next is going to be, where is it? The Medusa powder. I mean, the video of me paralyzing stuff really kind of just speaks for itself on how useful these are. So I'm just going to continue on. The Yoroka power and Raijin for the same purposes. These are just lower costing, much more effective versions of their, hell counterparts. And as you all know, when yokai, human enemies as well, but much more prevalent with yokai or out of key or key broken, you can one shot them with the shadow arts. These give good variety against enemies that normally may be immune or highly resistant to fire, so it's great having, a wider assortment of them. You can one shot the Nurionas with lightning because they're weak to it, and so on and so forth. Last one for A is going to be catwalking, and these are great. Really helps being able to maneuver around the game. And like I said in that video, I find it, I find myself actually effectively being able to navigate around enemies fine with just catwalking, not also needing sneak thief. So that's the reason why I put catwalking up here. And of course, it also gives you the decreased damage when you fall from high places, which is always nice. So yeah, it's just very good. I 9 times out of 10 always bring it with me. And then the last, sorry about that, clicked out of it, had to scroll up. The last being your stun arrows. So I'm a huge proponent of never start a fight without having attack from range. Stun arrows are great because it allows you to first get that, bullseye shot, then stun them, and follow up with a sneak attack grapple combo to deal that much more damage. Um, Next is going to be my all-time favorite, the Flaming Heron. Just absolutely destroys enemies. Very great for setting up sneak attack combos. Very useful for combining with other jutsu, especially the other shadow arts that teleport to enemies. Since this is a projectile and it slowly moves, combining it with the fox spirits, sprites to inflict confusion. It's just great. Like I said, you can also on the effects that have debuffs on ninjutsu hit, this also triggers that, so you can get your blindness on ninjutsu hit, blindness on enemies from this, and so on and so forth. Like this, absolutely always using this unless my enemy is immune or resistant to fire damage. That's the only time I'm not using these. Of course, quick change. Everybody uses quick change. Even the people that don't particularly like ninjutsu will have quick change because it's just useful to prevent yourself from dying. And then the last one being Eagle Eye, kind of the same thing with the stun arrows, is dealing that much more of a massive damage to enemies, especially when coupled with the stun arrows, you can get that bullseye damage, deal the extra damage from the eagle eye jutsu, then stun them, run up to them, close the distance instead of, like I said, trying to stagger them with a shuriken or other ranged jutsu. Close that distance while they're paralyzed, hit them with a grapple, and then follow up with a wake up attack. And a lot of their health is going to be gone if they're not already dead. So that is my tier list for the jutsu. I do have a few other ninjutsu ideas, but as far as all of these, you guys have seen all the videos get posted. So that is the end of my jutsu stuff, but there are a few other videos that I still intend to post about. So, I appreciate you guys watching, staying tuned, and hope you guys are with me to see the other videos that I have coming out. Thanks.